chapter 1 of the module about you being a whole human rather than just a professional is really about success. And this isn't going to become as a surprise to anybody. Most of us who have done any work on trying to undo some of the inevitable harm that our parents do to us, and I'm sure we will inevitably do to our own children, by putting their beliefs and their generation's values in our heads. We have some work to do to undo that generation's belief about what success looks like, because the world is different, priorities are different, access is different. And it's really important to start to do the work mentally to differentiate the voices in your head that are yours and that are legitimate and that are asking good questions and deciding what it is that's important to you versus the voices in your head that are external forces. Many of us find ourselves with our parents' voices in our head is a pretty common example, whereby they have instilled in us a belief that success looks like earning a lot of money or having a profession that, is they can tell their friends about at the dinner party, and that it's about financial security and about working hard and paying your way to be able to have a nest egg when you retire. The truth is the world is different, okay? We have choices available to us that our previous generations didn't have. We have more knowledge about what makes people happy and what is fulfilling than our parents had. We also have freedom of living in a liberal society that the judgment for choosing differently is a lot less. It's still there, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot less. But the flip side of that is that they had some advantages we didn't. And when we have those fairly boring conversations about home ownership and financial security and nest eggs and investment properties and even a guarantee that there'll be a pension when we are older, they are just not givens anymore. And I think that it's important to recognize that when you are trying to put those voices in context in your head about that the people who are trying to make us believe what's successful are basing it on their version of success for what was right for them, what was right in their era, and for the realities of the time. And even then, it probably wasn't always right for them. It's just they had less options to choose differently than we do. So I guess most of you will not be unfamiliar with this chart. For those who are listening along, realistically, all I'm showing is that most of us, to stereotype, our parents' generation of success looks like a pie chart with good salary, fancy job title, and people looking at you with respect and thinking that you're great at your job. And that was kind of the hallmarks when they wanted to help you choose the most suitable husband or, what was a great prospect and who they would tell their friends about at parties. That was really what it looked like. That was why they wanted you to be a doctor or a lawyer. That was why a lot of the conversations when we were young, a lot of the schooling system sets us up to strive towards those things. And all of the rest, all of the lifestyle stuff was kind of put in the realm of being a bit of a hippie or being a bit of a anti-society or, the kind of, if you want anarchy, then sure, don't aspire to those things. The reality is we're all different, okay? And we should all have our own pie chart, and it should have much more than 3 things on it. And I'm not saying that a good salary and people respecting me shouldn't be in your pie chart, simply that they shouldn't be the only 3 things that matter. And so to put up an example of a pie chart that is more appropriate for me, I've got a really big chunk of mine dedicated to just being well. And that means physically, that means mentally, that means spending time enjoying my life, being out in nature, getting to do things that make me feel this is why I am alive. And that has to be, for me, at the stage of life that I am at, a huge thing. And then the other huge chunk of my pie chart is around time with loved ones. I have a young child, and there isn't much else that can compete with the need and the importance of getting to do that in my life. Then I have some other things. Yeah, okay, money is in there, but I've equally balanced money for doing fun stuff, traveling the world, seeing things, going to shows, enjoying the fruits of my labor with financial security. Yeah, okay, it would be really nice if I had a nest egg, or at least if I can not assume that my generation can rely on a pension, that I will be okay at some point in the future. I also find it to be really important to love what I do. That's something that's incredibly important for my own well-being, to not feel like I am trudging away at something that doesn't feel valued or aligned or meaningful to me. And another decent chunk of a similar size is sometimes a surprising one for parents, but it is me time, because I am not able to be very good at the well-being or at the time with loved ones or at the loving what I do if I don't get the headspace to be me as a human, me that's not a mum and not me as a professional. So me time actually looks like prioritizing a lifestyle that doesn't always required me to be a mum or at work, and those are my only two choices. So I have made life decisions, I've made career decisions, I've made financial and investment decisions. By that I mean I accept that I live with less because I want half a day a week that I don't have to work and I don't have to have my child. I also want to be able to walk my dog at a time that I enjoy and that he enjoys. So those things for me, I decided on purpose the value in my life that they brought to me. And yeah, that means I had to put a dollar value on them. How much less am I willing to earn to have that thing? Now, when we start talking about how much less are we having to earn and what do we need to do and how does it all work, and, I couldn't afford to prioritize things differently, I think it is really important, and I don't want to invalidate the fact that the cost of living and it being really, really difficult to do life right now, I think it is also really important to spend time with people who don't have all of the things you do and see that they do make it work. I am a sole parent with no other income, and I go without for some stuff. But when I look at what does success look like, what are the most important things for me, whenever I feel the loss of XYZ thing or that holiday or that thing that I could have bought, I remember what I spent that money on instead. Or what if I didn't earn that money because I was busy having me time or prioritizing a dog walk or picking my kid up from daycare early. And it isn't easy. And I do not want to be one of those naive people that, comes from, out there in space and suggests that, oh, well, you should just make do with less in order to have more me time. That's ridiculous. And please don't for a second think that I believe that to be true for many, many people. I do, however, believe that many of us, particularly veterinarians and people in leadership roles, are in a privileged position where we should be able to make some of those choices. And they're choices that are yours to make. And please know that for some, having a house big enough for the kids to ride their bikes in a backyard should be what you spend your time and money on, if that has made it to your list of priorities. So I'm not sitting here saying, well, you should just buy a smaller house and then you can enjoy life more. That's not for me to say. What helps you and your family enjoy life more is for you to say. And that means if you work a little bit more and are home a little bit less, but you enjoy the things that are important to your family, that is absolutely 100% excellent. The only reason that I raise anything to do with finances is because I think that when we're talking about what does success look like, we have to deal with the elephant in the room that's success. And to enjoy all of those non-work related successful things, it costs money. And there are always going to be trade-offs. If you've heard of opportunity cost, is what else could you be doing with your time or money that you're not doing because you're doing this with it? And these are decisions that we've got to make. And the reason that I think it's important to talk about and have uncomfortable conversations about, even if this makes this a controversial point, is because it's important to do it on purpose. There will always be an opportunity cost of your time, whether that is at work earning money, whether that is with your family, whether that is traveling the world or having hobbies or things that bring you meaningful community and connection. There will always be something else that you could have done with that time. And we can choose to regret the other things that we could have done with it, or we can choose to decide that that's what makes it valuable. Because I have chosen that this is something that is so important to me that I have given up the opportunity to do those other things with this time. And therefore I can spend just that tiny little bit more mindfulness going, no, this is important. The same goes with money. when you spend the money on the bigger house, or when you spend the money on, or you work less to not have the bigger house, whichever one of those camps you are in, the opportunity cost of that money is real. But whenever you're lamenting it, oh, I have to do another hour's work. Oh, yeah, but my kids love the swimming pool. Think of how much more miserable I would be having to entertain them in the summer if they didn't have it. So it's really important to make the choices strategically so that whenever we are feeling a tendency towards frustration or towards regret, we can really remind myself, why did I make this choice and is it still right? Because, of course, the important thing to know about a pie chart with all of the things that are priorities, that changes over time. It should change over time. Depending on whether you are young and wanting to travel the world and be free and have no responsibilities, and who in their early 20s is thinking about their retirement, you shouldn't. Enjoy life. Versus maybe when you're a parent, or when you're caring for elderly relatives, or when you are in the thick of climbing the career ladder and really determined to be ambitious and be everything you can be in the workplace. Or when you're coming towards the other end and you're going, oh, well, what's important to life? And now I'm an empty nester, or now I'm going to have more free time on my hands. How do I want to spend that versus how much money do I want to spend on that? All of these things will shift at different periods of your life. And as long as you do it strategically and on purpose, that is all I'm asking of you. One model that I really have enjoyed trying to keep in mind over the course of my life is the difference between your experiencing self and your remembering self. Now, there's a really great concept about the fact that how we rate our happiness as the moment, and the moment that we are enjoying being happy, versus how we decide in a retrospective way, your remembering self, whether or not we were happy. Because generally when we are doing it retrospectively, our remembering self thinks about happiness a little bit differently to the self that is experiencing things right now and in the moment. And that is why, it's quite important to balance those two things, to look towards your future self and your remembering self, and accept that the joy that you feel in the moments of experiencing extreme happiness aren't necessarily the things that make up something that is judged to be a happy life. And this is one of the key differentiators between some of the countries that rate the happiest in the world, your Scandinavian countries, for example, versus some of the ones that rate the lowest levels of happiness at the time, is the difference in how they define happiness. Because a lot of the countries that are rating very high levels of happiness are really brought up and societally kind of ingrained to think about happiness more like how we might describe contentment. Fulfillment over time, belief that you enjoyed your time and that you lived a good life, which is a little bit different to some of the prevailing cultures which suggest happiness to mean you need to be experiencing joy all the time. You need to be happy. You need to be saving lives. You need to be traveling and seeing amazing sights and climbing Machu Picchu. And you need to be, cuddling kittens and puppies and getting oxytocin hits all the time. And that happiness in the moment, the experience of something that might more closely be defined as joy, brings a different set of priorities to somebody who is experiencing contentment, or the remembering self version of happiness. So I really encourage you, when you think about the term happy, to remember that it's kind of ambiguous. And which one do you want to prioritize at a given time? And again, remember that this will change when you're young and in your 20s. Oh my God, prioritize your experiencing self. Go for it. A lot of parents find themselves not doing an amazing job of focusing on their experiencing self, and they hope to God that their remembering self will make it worthwhile in the end. And that's a question we have to ask ourselves too. So I also want to use an example, a story that's told by Dr. Andy Rock, who just has this amazing way of framing the difference between happiness and joy. But he also gives this really interesting talk on the matter, where he talks about the fact that there is a Buddhist philosophy that suggests that life is suffering, and that's unavoidable, which is a kind of depressing way to think about life, really. But Dr. Andy Rourke gives this example of having recently had to put to sleep his elderly dog. And, you can hear the emotion in his voice as he's telling it. It's quite raw, it's quite recent. He talks about the dog having been through university with him, being through his marriage and his, the birth of his children, and it's been his constant companion. And so right now he's feeling incredible degrees of grief about the loss of this dog. But what he offers is that I had a choice about this. I could have never gotten a dog. And I could have experienced the small, minute grief that came every single day with coming home to an empty house, to never having the waggy tail that was happy to see me, to not having someone to comfort me when exams didn't go how I planned or relationships didn't go, never getting to watch my kids play in the yard with a dog. And that suffering is a choice that you need to balance with the suffering of having the joy of a dog and the grief of losing it. And for most of us, we will choose the grief of losing them so that we can enjoy the moment. And I really like this story because it really sets apart the fact that we could be doing anything. We could be doing other careers. We could probably have less emotional drain, less stress, less angry customers, maybe. Certainly, maybe less emotionally charged conversations with customers. And we might have better parts of our life for that. But what would we be choosing instead? So if life is suffering and you have to choose which type of suffering, or you have to choose which type of happiness, make your decisions on purpose. Know what you're in for, know the cost of them, accept the cost of them.